Arrival on Earth. The sleek silver spacecraft pierced through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of ionized particles in its wake. Inside the vessel, the alien twins Xyloth and Xyria gazed out in wonder at the vibrant blue planet below. Their large, almond-shaped eyes sparkled with anticipation for the cultural exchange that lay ahead. As the ship touched down on the landing pad, the twins took a moment to compose themselves. Xyloth, the more analytical of the two, reviewed the critical points of human etiquette they had learned. Xyria, the more emotive one, could barely contain her excitement to experience all the delights Earth had to offer. The hatch hissed open, and the twins emerged to a sight they had only seen in transmissions, a human settlement stretching out before them, a bustling metropolis pulsing with life. Towering skyscrapers glinted in the sunlight, while ribbons of roads wove between them, teeming with vehicles. It was a symphony of motion and energy, unlike anything on their serene, orderly homeworld. As they descended the ramp, a tall human male with a warm smile approached them. "Welcome to Earth, Xyloth and Xyria. I'm Jake, your cultural liaison," he said, extending his hand in the customary human greeting. Xyria brushed her slender, blue-tinged fingers against his pink, fleshy palm, marveling at the strange texture and the radiating body heat. "Thank you, Jake," Xyloth replied, mimicking the gesture. "We are most eager to begin our immersion in human society." As Jake led them to the waiting transport, he began to describe the itinerary he had planned. "Over the next few weeks, I'll be showing you the highlights of human civilization, our cities, our natural wonders, our cultural touchstones. You'll have a chance to interact with people from all walks of life and experience the full spectrum of the human condition." Xyria leaned forward, her silky, iridescent hair falling around her angular face. "We have studied your world extensively, but to see it firsthand, to feel it," she trailed off, her voice trembling with anticipation. Jake grinned, a glint of mischief in his eye. "Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Earth is a planet of contrasts, of extremes. It can be overwhelming, even for us humans, but that's what makes it so exciting." As the transport carried them into the heart of the city, the twins watched in rapt fascination at the scenes unfolding around them. Humans of all colors and sizes hurried along the sidewalks, some talking animatedly into small devices, others carrying bulging bags or ushering small children. Neon signs flickered and flashed, advertising a dizzying array of products and services. Music spilled out from open doorways, each song competing for attention. It was a sensory overload, a cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells. Yet beneath the chaos, the twins sensed an underlying rhythm, a pulse that seemed to unite this diverse species. It was the thrum of life being lived to its fullest, of billions of individuals chasing their dreams and desires. As they sped towards their first destination, Xyloth and Xyria exchanged a glance laden with unspoken meaning. They had known Earth would be different, but they hadn't anticipated the visceral pull it would exert on them. Already, they could feel the planet's magnetic charm drawing them in, beckoning them to explore its myriad wonders and unveil its deepest secrets. Little did they know that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change them in ways they could never have imagined. Earth, with all its beauty and vice, would leave an indelible mark on their alien souls. Immersion in human experiences. Over the next few days, Jake led Xyloth and Xyria on a whirlwind tour of human civilization. They marveled at the soaring skyscrapers of New York, the ancient ruins of Rome, and the neon-drenched streets of Tokyo. They trekked through the lush Amazon rainforest, scaled the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, and dove into the crystal-clear waters of the Great Barrier Reef. But it wasn't just the sights that captivated the twins. It was the richness of sensory experiences that came with them. They sampled the sweet, buttery pastries of Paris, the spicy, aromatic curries of Mumbai, and the smoky, savory barbecue of Texas. They danced to the pulsing beats of Rio's carnival, the haunting melodies of an Irish pub, and the frenetic rhythms of a Beijing opera. Xyloth and Syria were particularly drawn to human art and creativity. They spent hours wandering through the halls of the Louvre, the Hermitage, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, marveling at the paintings, sculptures, and artifacts that spanned millennia of human history. They watched awestruck as street performers juggled flaming torches, as ballerinas leaped and twirled across the stage, and as graffiti artists transformed drab walls into vibrant murals. At each new experience, the twins felt a deep resonance with the human spirit, the insatiable curiosity, the boundless imagination, the irrepressible drive to create and express. It was a spirit that transcended individual cultures and united the species in a shared quest for meaning and beauty. Jake watched with a mix of pride and puzzlement as Xyloth and Syria threw themselves into each new activity with a fervor that bordered on obsession. They seemed to come alive in the presence of human wonders, their eyes sparkling with a rapturous light, their bodies humming with barely contained energy. "I've never seen anyone embrace our world with such intensity," Jake remarked one evening as they sat atop a grassy hill, watching the sun set over the Serengeti. "It's like you're trying to absorb every last drop of what makes us human." Yuria turned to him, her eyes brimming with emotion. "Can you blame us? Your species has achieved so much, not just in terms of technology and infrastructure, but in terms of art, culture, and the exploration of the soul. You've taken the raw materials of existence and shaped them into something profound and beautiful." Xyloth nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Our society is advanced, but it lacks the vibrancy, the passion that we've seen here. We have order and efficiency, but we don't have this." He gestured broadly at the savanna stretched out before them, at the herd of elephants ambling in the distance. "This what?" Jake prompted. "This sense of being alive," Xyloth said softly, "of seizing each moment and wringing every drop of meaning and wonder from it. You humans burn so brightly, even if it means you sometimes burn out." Jake fell silent, considering the twins' words. He had always taken for granted the kaleidoscope of experiences that Earth offered, the endless opportunities for growth and self-discovery. But seeing it through their eyes, he realized anew what a privilege it was to be human, to have access to such a rich tapestry of life. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jake made a silent vow to himself. He would show Xyloth and Syria the very best of what humanity had to offer, the highest aspirations and the deepest connections. He would guide them through the labyrinth of the human experience, making sure they emerged not just enlightened, but transformed. Little did he know that the transformation had already begun, and that it would lead the twins down a path none of them could have foreseen. Understanding human relationships. As their Earth Odyssey continued, Jake decided it was time for Xyloth and Syria to experience the heart of human society, the complex web of relationships that bind individuals together. He introduced them to his inner circle, a diverse group of friends and family that spanned generations, professions, and backgrounds. There was his childhood best friend, a boisterous bear of a man named Tom who regaled the twins with tales of their youthful misadventures. There was his sister, a whip-smart lawyer named Sarah, who engaged them in spirited debates about justice and ethics. There were his parents, a silver-haired couple who welcomed the aliens with open arms and stuffed them full of homemade meals. Xyloth and Syria were fascinated by the warmth and familiarity that flowed between Jake and his loved ones. They watched as the humans teased and bantered with each other, their jibes laced with affection. They saw how they supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's triumphs, their bonds forged through years of shared history. But what intrigued the twins most were the romantic relationships they observed. They saw the way Jake's eyes lit up when he spoke of his partner, a musician named Alex who was currently on tour. They noticed the gentle touches and knowing glances exchanged between Sarah and her wife, a quiet intimacy that spoke volumes. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table at Jake's parents' house, Yuria couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "On our world, relationships are more practical," she said, struggling to find the right words. We form partnerships based on compatibility and shared goals, but they lack the emotional intensity we see here. Jake's mother, a therapist named Leela, smiled knowingly. Human relationships, especially romantic ones, are a source of great joy and fulfillment, but also of great pain and complexity, she explained. We are drawn to each other not just by logic, but by a deep primal need for connection and understanding. Xyloth leaned forward, his brow furrowed. But doesn't that make you vulnerable? Doesn't it expose you to the risk of rejection, betrayal, loss? Tom let out a booming laugh. Of course it does, but that's what makes it so exhilarating. To love someone, truly and deeply, is to give them the power to hurt you. But it's also to trust that they won't, that they'll cherish and protect your heart as you do theirs. Sarah nodded, her hand finding her wife's under the table. It's a leap of faith every time. But it's a leap worth taking, because the rewards, the joy, the intimacy, the growth, are immeasurable. As the conversation flowed around them, Xyloth and Syria felt a strange ache in their chests, a longing for something they couldn't quite name. They had always been content with their platonic bond, a connection born of shared genetic heritage and cultural upbringing. But now, witnessing the depth and richness of human love, they wondered if they were missing out on something essential. Over the next few days, the twins found themselves studying the humans around them with a new intensity, trying to decode the subtle cues and gestures that signaled attraction and affection. They watched couples strolling hand in hand in the park, friends sharing secrets over coffee, families laughing and squabbling in equal measure. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, they began to crave that same depth of connection for themselves. They longed to experience the thrill of falling in love, the comfort of unconditional acceptance, the growth that comes from intertwining one's life with another's. They didn't know it yet, but this newfound yearning would lead them down a path of both discovery and danger, as they sought to unravel the mysteries of the human heart. Exploring human vices, as Xyloth and Syria delved deeper into the intricacies of human relationships, they also began to discover the darker side of Earth's allure, the seductive pull of vice and indulgence. It started innocently enough, with Jake taking them to a trendy nightclub to experience the city's vibrant nightlife. The twins were initially overwhelmed by the pulsing music, the flashing lights, and the press of sweaty bodies on the dance floor. But as they sipped their first drinks, a sweet, fruity concoction that masked the bite of alcohol, they felt a pleasant warmth spread through their limbs, a loosening of inhibitions. Soon, they were moving to the beat, their bodies swaying in time with the human throng. They marveled at the release they felt, the way the music and the moment seemed to transport them to a place of pure, unadulterated joy. Over the next few weeks, Jake introduced them to other earthly pleasures. The thrill of high-stakes gambling in Las Vegas, the rush of adrenaline from skydiving over the Swiss Alps, the blissful oblivion of a drug-fueled rave in an abandoned warehouse. Xyloth and Syria threw themselves into each new experience with reckless abandon, chasing the highs that made them feel truly alive. They reveled in the way these activities seemed to strip away the layers of their alien identity, leaving them raw and exposed, but also somehow more connected to the human experience. Jake watched their growing obsession with a mix of unease and fascination. He had always been drawn to the wilder side of life himself, but he knew firsthand the dangers of taking things too far. He tried to caution the twins, to remind them of the importance of moderation and balance. "I know it's exciting to let loose and try new things," he told them one morning as they nursed hangovers from the previous night's festivities. "But you have to be careful not to lose yourself in the process. Addiction is a real thing, and it can sneak up on you before you know it." Syria waved away his concerns, her eyes still glazed from the remnants of the night's high. "We're just having fun, Jake. Isn't that what life on Earth is all about? Seizing the moment, embracing the chaos." Xyloth nodded in agreement, his usually sharp gaze softened by the lingering effects of the drugs. Our lives back home are so structured, so predictable. Here, we feel like we can finally let go, be our true selves. Jake sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of their jaws. He knew that sometimes the only way to learn was through experience, even if that experience was painful. He resolved to keep a closer eye on the twins, to be there to catch them if they fell. But even he couldn't predict how quickly things would spiral out of control. As the weeks turned into months, Xyloth and Syria's pursuit of pleasure became increasingly reckless and all-consuming. They stayed out all night, sleeping through the days and ignoring Jake's attempts to engage them in more wholesome activities. They blew through their allocated funds, maxing out the credit cards Jake had helped them obtain. They started hanging out with a different crowd, a group of hard-partying humans who seemed to have an endless supply of drugs and a complete disregard for consequences. Jake watched helplessly as the twins he had grown to care for slipped further and further into the abyss. He tried to reason with them, to appeal to their sense of responsibility and self-preservation, but they were too far gone, too intoxicated by the false freedom of their new lifestyle. It all came to a head one night when Jake received a frantic call from a hospital downtown. Xyloth and Syria had been brought in after overdosing at an underground party. They were alive, but barely, their alien physiologies struggling to process the toxic cocktail of substances they had ingested. As Jake sat by their bedsides, watching the machines breathe for them, he couldn't help but feel a crushing sense of guilt and failure. He had brought them to this planet, exposed them to its temptations, and then failed to protect them from its darkest depths. He could only hope that when they woke up, if they woke up, they would find the strength to claw their way back to the light. But he knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, and that they would need all the support and love they could get to make it through. The question was, would it be enough? Or had the very thing that had drawn them to Earth, its intoxicating, all-consuming energy, been the thing that ultimately destroyed them? Only time would tell, and Jake vowed to be there every step of the way, no matter how hard it got. He owed them that much and more. Grappling with addiction, the weeks following Xyloth and Syria's overdose were some of the darkest of Jake's life. The twins survived, but their recovery was slow and painful, marked by bouts of sickness, despair, and crippling cravings for the substances that had nearly killed them. Jake did his best to support them, visiting them in the hospital every day, bringing them books and music from their homeworld to comfort them. But as they grew stronger physically, their psychological dependence on their vices only seemed to intensify. Against medical advice, they checked themselves out of the hospital and threw themselves back into the party scene with a vengeance. They sought out harder drugs, riskier thrills, pushing their bodies and minds to the very brink of destruction. Jake watched in horror as they transformed from the curious, vibrant beings he had first met into gaunt, hollow-eyed shells of themselves. They stopped attending the cultural events and intellectual discussions they had once loved, instead spending all their time in seedy bars and underground clubs. They blew through the last of their funds and started stealing to support their habits. They lied to Jake, to each other, to themselves, insisting that they had everything under control, even as they spiraled deeper into the abyss. Jake tried everything he could think of to get through to them. He staged interventions, enlisted the help of addiction specialists, even threatened to have them deported back to their homeworld. But nothing seemed to penetrate the fog of their obsession. One night, after a particularly harrowing bender that left Syria in the hospital with alcohol poisoning, Jake reached his breaking point. He cornered Xyloth in the waiting room, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and despair. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice cracking. "I can't watch you two destroy yourselves and pretend it's not happening. I love you both too much to enable your addiction any longer." Xyloth stared at him, his once bright eyes dulled by the weight of his dependence. "We're not addicts, Jake. We're just living life to the fullest, the way you humans do." Jake shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "This isn't living, Xyloth. This is a slow death, a suicide by inches, and I won't be a part of it anymore." With a heavy heart, Jake made the decision to cut the twins off. He canceled their credit cards, changed the locks on his apartment, blocked their calls and messages. It was the hardest thing he'd ever had to do, but he knew it was the only way to force them to confront the reality of their situation. For weeks, he heard nothing from them. He tried to go about his life, to focus on his work and his own relationships, but the worry gnawed at him constantly. He had nightmares of finding them dead in a gutter somewhere, their brilliant minds snuffed out by the very human vices they had embraced so eagerly. And then, one day, a knock on his door. He opened it to find Xyloth and Syria, looking gaunt and haggard, but with a new clarity in their eyes. They fell into his arms, sobbing, apologizing, begging for his forgiveness and his help. Over the next few months, Jake worked tirelessly to support the twins in their recovery. He got them into a rehab program, attended meetings with them, held their hands through the shakes and the night sweats and the crushing guilt. It was a long, arduous journey, marked by setbacks and relapses, but gradually, Xyloth and Syria began to emerge from the darkness. They rediscovered their passion for learning, for exploring, for connecting with others in meaningful ways. They knew they could never go back to the way things were, to the innocent wonder with which they had first approached Earth. But they also knew that their struggle had given them a deeper understanding of the human condition, a greater empathy for the flaws and foibles that make us who we are. And as they prepared to return to their homeworld, to share what they had learned with their own people, they knew that they would carry a piece of Earth with them always, not just the highs and the lows, but the love and the resilience that had seen them through their darkest days. They had come to Earth seeking paradise, and in a way they had found it, not in the fleeting pleasures of vice, but in the enduring strength of the human spirit. And for that, they would be forever grateful. Reckoning and recovery. The day of Xyloth and Syria's departure was bittersweet. As they stood on the landing pad, their meager possessions packed into a single bag, they couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude and sorrow for all they had experienced on Earth. Jake stood with them, his eyes misty with emotion. Over the past year, he had become more than just their guide and friend. He had become their anchor, their lifeline, the one constant in a world of chaos and temptation. "I'm going to miss you both so much," he said, pulling them into a tight hug. "But I'm so proud of how far you've come, and I know you're going to do amazing things back on your homeworld." Kazuria smiled, her once haunted eyes now clear and bright. "We owe it all to you, Jake. You showed us the true meaning of friendship, of love, of what it means to be human." Xyloth nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "We came here seeking adventure, escape, but what we found was so much deeper. We found the strength to face our demons, to become better versions of ourselves." As they boarded the ship that would take them back to their planet, they knew that they would never forget their time on Earth. It had been a journey of highs and lows, of joy and pain, but through it all, they had learned and grown in ways they never could have imagined. In the months that followed, Xyloth and Syria threw themselves into their new mission, sharing the lessons of their Earth Odyssey with their own people. They spoke of the incredible diversity and creativity of human culture, the depth and complexity of human emotions and relationships. But they also spoke of the dangers of excess, of losing oneself in the pursuit of pleasure and escape. They shared their own story of struggle and redemption, hoping to inspire others to find balance and purpose in their lives. And as they watched their society slowly begin to change, to open up to new ideas and ways of being, they knew that their pain had not been in vain. They had been transformed by their time on Earth, but they had also been given the opportunity to transform others, to make a real difference in the universe. Years later, as they sat in their living room, surrounded by the artifacts and mementos of their Earth adventure, they received a message from a familiar source. It was Jake, reaching out across the vastness of space to let them know that he was thinking of them, that he was proud of all they had accomplished. As they read his words, tears streaming down their faces, they felt a sense of profound connection and gratitude. They had started their journey as aliens, seeking to understand a strange and fascinating species, but they had ended it as something more, as fellow travelers on the path of life, united by the bonds of love and experience. And as they looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities that lay before them, they knew that they would always carry a piece of Earth in their hearts, a reminder of the paradise they had found, not in any one place or experience, but in the unbreakable spirit of the human soul.